Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Near Mint Conditions, Old Reader, New Reader. You know, I realize it's kind of hard when I have two different shows not to have a muscle memory to accidentally say the name of the other one.
Well, you crushed it.
Thank you. I panicked for a second. But I'm here with Just Jessica.
Just Jessica.
One of my favorite guests of all time.
One of my favorite hosts of all time.
Oh my God. Stop.
Oh my goodness.
This is how we met. That's crazy.
This is our meet cute. Hello,
it is.
Everyone.
What if it was? That'd be really odd. If I was like, hey, random person. And we're here to talk more about one of the best books of the year.
Oh, whoa! You buried the lead.
Well, Wonder Woman Historia. You had the same cover I did. I took my dust jacket off.
Apparently, the other version has really beautiful artwork in the dust jacket.
Oh,
like
yeah.
inside.
I like this cover though.
But this is just white. I know. I really like this cover. You know what? Maybe I'll buy two. I don't know. I love it so much. But inside, can we talk about this?
Oh, yes,
did you?
Can.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, did you do it yet? Did you undress yet? Yeah, there we go.
Absolutely. I love the way it feels. I love that it looks like an older tome.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes, and if you've not gotten a chance to read it, the cover they chose here mimics the inside cover for the individual issues as well. Yeah, by the little prologue that comes before all three of the issues that are included in this deluxe.
Yeah, I will say this before we get into it. This reminded me. And I don't know if you were into the same stuff when you were younger, but I read a lot of like Greek mythology books that like also had pictures. And this felt like that to me. It felt like I was coming home.
Yeah, especially issue 1 particularly. What was that one author? I felt like we all had to read it. And I believe her book was called Greek Mythology. Was it Edith something? I'll have to look it up.
Maybe.
But I agree. I think it definitely had that in spades, that vibe for sure. The first issue, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And so basically, we'll dive into the specifics about it. But this book is basically just the origins of the Amazon. So if you're interested in Wonder Woman and you're interested in what came before, this is a familiar but potentially different version of the origin of how the Amazon were created. And it's incredibly interesting. If you are someone who's read Wonder Woman and liked it a lot because of the Greek mythology relations through that, stories throughout there, you'll love this. I think because it delves into that a lot, but also delves into the relationships between the gods and goddesses and humanity, and also the relationships between women and men throughout history as well, and what that looks like. Incredibly interesting as a huge Wonder Woman fan. But even if I wasn't, I would like this. I would enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I definitely felt reading it that it would appeal. It's one of those books that would appeal to new readers, particularly those who are very into Greek mythology. Again, particularly issue 1, and we'll talk about how each of them are structured kind of maybe a little bit differently and intentionally so. That book that I was thinking of earlier was Mythology by Edith Hamilton, which may not be a woman, actually. It's 1942. I'm not sure how many women were published in 1942. Some, but I'm not going to assume. But yeah, I definitely got that vibe of like the classic Greek tales in the way the first issue was particularly not just told, but also drawn. Yeah.
Beautifully. Watch all the part. Before you start, real quick. So Amanda let me know that apparently James Gunn posted on Instagram about this 6 hours ago. Not us.
Whoa.
That would have been crazy. Wonder Woman Historia. So
I was gonna say that makes me very anxious, and I'll be logging off.
I would hate that. If you're here, just appreciate it and don't say anything.
Well, I'm glad he's posting it. I think one of the in that slate that he initially rolled out a couple, I guess it's been months now.
Yeah.
I think the Themyscira Paradise Lost kind of story was what he was wanting to tell. So it's really exciting to see him referencing this at all. Because as you said, it is a retelling of the origin, although I would say like it goes further back than most Diana
Oh,
origins
absolutely. That's what's refreshing about it.
go back even in their flashbacks. Like even in a flashback of like Themyscira itself, it doesn't go this far.
No.
And it's really exciting. Some of the choices that they made to change up. And I will say, and I can put in the comments after the video, there is a deep dive, a director's cut of this book that's on YouTube that's like 2 hours long almost for each issue, where
Oh, wow. I know.
Kelly and the artists for each one are interviewed about the choices that they made. And it was riveting, like 6 hours of my life. I'm really being genuine. So much thought went into this, and I'm sure it'll come
Yeah.
out as we talk about it. But it's exciting to see if this is potential material he's picking up for inspiration for the
Oh,
adaptation. I
yeah.
think you
Because he
can't go
said
wrong here.
Historia is a breathtaking work of sequential art and one of the best things to come out of DC official and comics in the past few years. And he said thank you to Kelly Sue DeConnick, Phil Jimenez, Gene Ha, and Nicholas Scott for the incredible experience. Get it anywhere fine books are sold now. So I was like, all right, good job.
And I'll bury the lead. You buried the lead when we first got on. Not only is it one of the best books of the year, the first time I read this and then this time rereading it for the show, I felt like it should be in the list of like things to have in your essentials or starter collection. Like if I won't say it's my favorite Wonder Woman or anything like that, because Diana isn't, spoiler alert, doesn't come till the very end, and it's not about her as you pointed out.
Yeah.
But I would put it up there as far as Wonder Woman representation still, because a lot of who you are is where you come from. And so I think I'll let it settle. I don't want to get like overhyped for this year, but I imagine in a couple years that I would put this amongst like, hey, these are the 15 DC books you should own. And I mean that very like genuinely. If you've not picked it up, you'll hear us rant or rave here in a moment. But
and definitely
I can't stress enough how
essential
great
Wonder
it is.
Woman.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So let's dig into issue 1. So when this came out, this is part of the Black Label by DC. So when they came out, it was like these really big looking single issues, even though they look like booklets. I did buy at least one of them just for the cover, but I waited to read it until it was actually out. And already, it's definitely prose heavy, but it's beautiful. So from like, I can show this, right? Yeah, I can show this. From like from the first pages, just even the way that they design each of the goddesses, each of the female goddesses, because those are the goddesses through which the Amazons were created and gifted. But look at just like immediately, they were not messing around with this book. So even if you're like for art alone, and I would say there's a lot more to this than just the art, but art alone, breathtaking.
Yeah, I think all the art's great. And as we kind of alluded to earlier, there's a different artist for each issue. So when we get into the other artists, we can show more examples of that. But particularly in the first one, I think I texted Maddie, like, this is so metal. Like, that's the word that I chose. But that is how I felt while I was reading issue 1. Like, all of the choices felt very radical, but authentic to who those characters were. And the inspiration sources are all over the place. That page that you showed earlier, I think it was the Hera spread. She's, in that director's cut that I was referencing at the beginning of the show, they mentioned Katharine Hepburn as an inspiration for drawing.
Yeah.
And this whole book throughout all 3 issues is just riddled with these really intentional choices, even about poses, about costumes. So absolutely,
did she mention if that was her choice or
point.
Phil Jimenez's choice? Because I could see that being Phil's.
I'm sure there was partly collaborative, but she referenced The Lion in Winter, which is a movie with Peter O'Toole, and said even some of the relationship between Hera and Zeus throughout the book was kind of inspired by the banter in The Lion in Winter between Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love as this starts because they give you a breakdown of all of the goddesses, which just to begin with, the different design choices for each of the goddesses was really, really neat. It's great to see how everybody does it. It's all different. Hecate was my favorite because she's just all spikes and crazy looking.
Metal. One would say metal.
One would say metal. Athena, who is, they literally say she is made of edges. She is like, she's not a skin. She's just the armor that she wears.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. And then, of course, Hera just being the most badass, glamorous bitch to ever walk like Olympus. Like, and then they start talking about the injustice that like that not men face. They even say not men. Like, and they talk about different ways of degradation, occlusion, suppression, humiliation, subjugation. And they're like, we have to do something about it. Because Hera, because they say she has 1,000 eyes and she witnesses all that at once.
And also 1,000 eyes. And what is it that she's wearing? A peacock that has those eyes all throughout the feathers. Yeah.
Do you think Wonder Woman represents feminism or anti-patriarchy? And if there's one culture that can have their own version of Wonder Woman, what culture would that be? I don't think I see absolutely feminism, but not in a way that is the negative way that some of that word can carry. I would say that some versions of the Themyscira would be, I mean, they are anti-patriarchy, but not in like a we hate men way. You know what I mean? That makes sense.
Right. Patriarchy. I mean, this isn't really the time or place necessarily to give like a lecture, but patriarchy also puts men in a tough spot as well. So I would say yes, in that it's anti-patriarchy in the true definition of that. And that's inclusive of the way the patriarchy can harm men and their ability to have relationships with one another, with people of the opposite sex, to not feel different pressures in society, just like women or other non-men might feel in a patriarchal system as well.
Yeah, and I would say that in this book, because I mean, a lot of people see Themyscira and the Amazons like historically as being just like the way that sometimes they are written is like, oh, men are the worst. You should never be around men. There's been some Themyscira and Amazons written that way. And actually, throughout this book, for the most part, that's not the case, except for Hippolyta, which we'll get to. That she has her own thing to kind of work through, where all the Amazons are like, hey, we don't know yet. This boy, he hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah,
we don't know. If
powerful.
he messes up, we'll come back. Right. But they are cognizant of it's not how you're born or what you're born as. It is what you do with that. Kristen, hello, bestie.
You're right. We are talking about metal.
God, everything is so beautiful.
Well, you were just mentioning that page. I did want to show it because, again, this is an intentional art choice. You know, you were mentioning this conversation where they're referencing different acts of violence against women here, or crimes against women. And I think what I like about this choice, and again, I can't reference the director's cut enough, but even in reading it before watching it, I noticed that the violence here isn't really depicted very clearly. You see that it's kind of just a silhouette, enough for you to say, okay, I know what's happening, but not to be overly traumatizing to someone maybe who's experienced that, or to glorify it in any way. And then I will just quickly show that you see those examples, and then we just can't talk about this book without this page. We just cannot. Because you zoom out, you have those examples, and then you see that there are just multitudes more. And it's a really powerful page turn, you know, if there ever was one, for sure.
I mean, it's devastating. Because Hera is actually, I see all of these things that women have gone through throughout history just because of how they were born in their position. And she gathers all of the rest of the female goddesses to talk to Zeus. And immediately Zeus fumbles, as Zeus does. He sees them, they're like, hey, we gotta talk, Zeus. We gotta have some grievances. And he's like, oh, how you do glow when your bosoms are ripe with passion. And he talks down to her the time. He's like, you know, how does he say? Oh yeah, because he's like, oh, I've seen you blush before. And she's like, oh, husband, if you had deigned to visit me at any time in the past 3 eons, you would know that these cheeks have been stained with a dual rouge of loathing and disgust. And he's like, see, that's my girl. There's that wit. right? Or no, now you found your wit, as if she didn't have it before.
Mm-hmm.
So already just like playing down the entire time. And oh god, it was just it just got me because she's like, hey, we need to talk about men. And he's like, what do you mean, all mankind? Yeah, we'll kill them. And she's like, no, not that. We need to talk about the society, how it's put together. And he's like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
In Herodotus, there are tales of love and beauty. And she's like, what about Lydia? The one, the every daughter of Lydia will work as a prostitute until she has raised sufficient money for a dowry and can secure a husband. And he's like, there's worse fates. I'm like, oh my god, Deuce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Spot on. He's like, we all have a role to play, and you all have yours. So do women. It's like, it's just too, it's crazy to see in this context, in this art, in this, you know, Greek gods of what we would presume if they were real would be our past, right? Our distant past, and having very similar conversations. And to see how the Amazons came about.
With no consequence, because the reality of the situation is it doesn't, in theory, it doesn't affect them. You know, there's obviously, we mentioned, you know, reading Greek mythology as a kid, you really get the impression like we're just the puppets of the gods. And later there's great art that really kind of shows almost as if you can see them looking from above and puppeteering what's going down below. And we can show that when we get there. But yeah, they're very campy with one another. The art is incredibly psychedelic. And yes, Kristen, metal. So much so that it's like incomprehensible. You definitely get the vibe that this is not planet Earth. Yeah. It's very otherworldly, and these people are just on another level entirely, which is exactly how you want to start. And so they talk about how to address what was just brought up and come up with a very interesting solution, I suppose, to that argument.
Yeah, and I love the way that it's set up and the way that they talk, because the whole way through this is prose, it's description. It's like leading you into, there's a narrator that's kind of it's walking you through here, as it should be with this kind of story, I feel like. But then they talk about how all the goddesses go and convene in hell, in Hades. And they convene at the walls of the lost, where the souls of all women whose lives are taken in violence and consigned there, eternally guarded. So they all meet there except for Hera. So Hera, the woman who put this all together, does not show. Mm-hmm. She does not join the rest of her sisters here when they convene and together decide to make they give these gifts and make the Amazons and make these different tribes. Oh, and it's crazy looking, and the art is insane. I cannot stress this enough. The level of detail that went into this.
And the color choices are really interesting, like, because I think other than obviously the art is going to change when the artist changes, but the color palette also changes and progresses throughout the 3 issues. Nothing at all like this. This is such unique coloring choices in this first issue, 100%. But yeah, they come up with this kind of solution in a sense, and each of the goddesses is bestowing kind of their blessing to create what would be sort of the tribes of the Amazons, as you said. Which also we'll kind of talk about it, I think in issue 2 or 3, there's a really cool explanation of each of them that's done in a really creative way. But this is also in a creation that I really like, because we have seen, of course, where the Amazons are sometimes split. There's like the Bana Migdal, however you say. I never can say things out loud.
Yeah, because we've got other Amazonian tribes. We have the one where Artemis is from. And then we have where Yara Flor is from. And I think there's a couple others.
But this is the first time we really see where they're kind of modeled after a specific goddess, which is really interesting because, of course, the goddesses, as you talked about earlier, are representing different things. They're all drawn really differently. Later, we'll learn they all live really differently from one another. They're not a monolith, and yet they coexist. They have several examples, both the actual goddesses, then the Amazons that are in the tribes, argue with one another and bicker in the way that sisters would, but you do get the sense that they respect one another, even when they're very cutting towards one another, all throughout, even till the very last issue. Actually, there's a conversation at the end between Hera and Artemis, where you could really see that sort of sister-esque
Oh yeah.
dynamic. So I really liked the way that those characterizations were done as well. So that story is happening above, and then down below we kind of have a different story going on.
So real quick before we go into issue 2, I do want to highlight the different the first Amazons of each tribe created. And they very much reflect the ones that they come from.
Yes.
Like, obviously, it's hard for me to point, but like Hecate, right? And we have like Antiope, who's with Artemis. I don't recognize all of the names, but I know Antiope. So they take these like Grecian myths, these like heroes, and tie them into the Amazonian mythos. So cool.
Yes. Wild. But yeah, down below, before issue 1 even closes,
that's true.
Actually,
yeah.
we do get a glimpse of Hippolyta, who we know, a character who has been Wonder Woman before, a character that's been an adversary in a sense to Wonder Woman, a character that's been an encourager, character that's been the impetus sometimes for Wonder Woman's quest or a significant life change. And yet, while we do know things about her, we have never seen her like this. That is, I don't think let us know in the chat if there are runs that give this much thought to her character. And that was really exciting for me because I actually think she's a really interesting character. When I get glimpses of like what she's doing back on Themyscira, it's kind of exciting for me. But we never get like a true origin for her that isn't only about the violence that was done upon her, which this definitely includes, but is so much more than that. And I think that is really, really important because the only time you ever really see flashbacks for that character, it's all the violence bestowed upon her for the most part.
Well, and I never knew that she, and I think you've read more than I have, but I never knew that she was human first. Before she
depending
was
on the version that
Amazon.
you're reading. It depends on the version of the origin you're reading, yeah. But this is an important part of this story for sure, that she starts as human and in a very human society. She's giving birth and she's hoping it's a boy because boys can make their own living in the world and society that she's in. But girls only cost money. They would only be a cost upon the family to give a dowry to someone, etc. They're expendable in society. And she also knows what violence could potentially await that girl. And so she does make a really difficult decision once she figures out that it's a girl. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
So Hippolyta, basically, her role in this is established as someone who, when the baby is born and they are not wanted, she is meant to be someone who exposes them to the elements. Basically, if you've seen Prince of Egypt.
And if you haven't, pause this right now, go watch it, come back.
She puts the baby in a basket and onto the river. Because basically that's not her killing them, right? That's just her exposing them, and then hopefully someone will find them. And she's doing this, and she's starting to have this like back and forth. She's like, there's no need for guilt. The gods will decide if this baby will be okay. And she's having this internal like struggle with this, and eventually ends up running after and trying to save the baby. And she does this for hours. We see her go through all sorts of conditions. She's frantically looking until she's basically, she's run to death. She's exhausted on the side and like in snow.
Yeah,
she's saved by the Amazons.
It ends with Hippolyta's too tired to speak. So yeah, she's just totally run ragged in this quest, and ultimately, doesn't find in that moment the baby.
Yeah, so these men find her, and they say, "Oh, if you run away from your master, obviously you must be a slave." Because she's run down rags, and she's prepared to die, and they're threatening to cut out her tongue. But suddenly, the Amazons come in and save her. They speak for her. They fight against these men. And they say, so we speak for her. The brigands don't die that night for what they might have done to Hippolyta. They die for all the women who came before, the ones who put us on their path. They die for the tongues they did take. And in doing so, they lead us to this moment, to our Hippolyta.
Chef's kiss.
Perfect.
Chef's kiss.
And they show up there, they're bloodied, right? You have what looks to be, I think it's all Artemis Crusoe and Antiope. And she
a
decides
lot of
this moment,
antlers.
she's like, I want to be with these women. I'm going to find them, and that is my life's purpose. And already Hera's keeping an eye on her. So even though Hera didn't join the crew,
her and the baby,
the baby, she's decided to pick up the baby. She decided to keep her with her because she has plans. Of course, Hera has admitted that she can see up to the future. She knows exactly how this will work. And she admitted to her sisters that whatever they're doing wasn't ultimately going to change anything. But even her, she can't quite not supervise or be in the know about it. Which I love that back and forth, because she's like, why? She's keeping the baby. And Artemis is like, I don't understand. Or not, Athena doesn't understand. And she's like, you have 1,000 eyes. She says, I have 1,000,002.
And it's important to note, she says she's keeping the soul. The soul is important. So she kind of takes this, like, it looks like a gold ball, and I think you're supposed to think it's the soul of the baby out. And it's kind of where the first issue ends. And then we do, as we talked about, get another prologue. Maddie mentioned this before. There is some, we don't know actually at the start of this who exactly is being talked to, this reminded me a lot of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly who Kara or who Ruthie was writing to, or Ruth I, depending on how you were saying that as you read it. But yeah, we've got another sort of lead in this one, and we have an art change on this one.
I love that they re-show the goddesses every time. So if you could show that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll show you. And I really liked, by the way, this opening for Jean Ha. I was like, oh, the art changed, and then I was like, oh, okay, I really like this.
Yeah.
In the director's cut for Jean Ha, I know everyone's tired of me saying this, but please go watch
I'm gonna watch it.
He mentions that you can really tell here that he took inspiration a lot from these scenes from the Greek statues, the marble of the Greek statues.
Yeah.
And you can really tell that in some of the line work on these. They do look like they're carved from stone, even though they, of course, have flesh and coloring to them. But yeah, we get kind of that refamiliarization with each of them. We do have
to talk about real quick from like a photography perspective and art perspective. This layout is so gorgeous.
It is, yeah.
It is breathtaking. If I could have any of this art in my house.
There's one, it's in this issue, I'll bring it up, that I was like I was already like wowed by the first issue.
Yeah.
I also want to say, earlier in the chat, Crazed said hello, and I want to say thank you to Crazed, because she is the reason that I was like, okay, I need to prioritize this. I had bought the single issues as they were coming out digitally, but I just hadn't really read them. I just kept saying, like, I'll read later, and I regret putting this off. I cannot stress enough how everyone should go read this immediately if you haven't, but thank you for that push, 100%.
Yeah, because normally, we talk about normally in art changes, I get worried, but I am so thankful for the 3 different art styles. I think it helps ground you really well in the next part of the story, because they're all so great and they all communicate to one another. So you don't lose who is who. You're still very aware of who is who, where you are. But immediately it helps put me in a new phase of like Hippolyta's life, a new phase of what is happening with the Amazons. Like I feel like I can switch well.
Yeah, for me, and there's debate about issues 2 and 3. I could see it both ways, but for me, the story kind of goes from being very big. We talked about how cosmic, how metal it looked at the beginning, but also just the story itself is like Greek gods arguing up in Olympus. It can't get more removed from here at all. Then in issue 2, you get real small, because issue 1 ends with Hippolyta. Then we're really through Hippolyta, right on the ground in the middle of what's happening. And the art really reflects that. And then the story widens a bit. The coloring changes in Nicola's art to kind of have a blend of both, because at that point, as we'll talk about, the 2 stories are very much more intertwined. So I do think the art plays a massive role in the storytelling here, more so than most books, although art always plays a huge role.
It's so collaborative. I mean, especially in this, but I think people forget, and I think people on YouTube like me who review comic books forget that in a lot of cases, yes, there is a writer and they are writing the story, but there are two creators of the book, and they do collaborate, and how they work together affects the story overall and the tone. And it's easy to say, oh, it's this person's run.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's not always just that person, especially when it's not big too. Is much more a collaborative process.
And I would argue, you know, of course, cover art is its own art as well.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it's a little challenging. You get this gorgeous cover of a run, even if it's not a variant, and like the interior art someone else, and it might still be good, but sometimes it's a bit of a letdown because like the cover art is so intricate. It's so like it's meant to be wowed because you're meant to want to pull it off the shelf, but really most of the interior art here, almost all of it, I would say, is like cover art worthy. And again, not to like disparage the two, but like I think it really, I just can't stress enough what bang for your buck this is on all ends.
Absolutely. And so we were talking about, so you know, she goes through, she's trying to get to the Amazons. Eventually she does run into Artemis because she's basically trying to track them and see like where, and see the clues of where they've been. And she runs into Artemis, returns the horse to Artemis, and Artemis blesses her. Because Artemis is like, yeah, I can't give you everything. I can't turn you into an Amazon, even though that's what you wish. But yeah, I will do what I can for you. And I also love one of the things, I think maybe you kind of hinted at it, but the way that they show, I'll do my best to kind of show, it's hard for me if I'm sharing a hidden screen.
Yeah.
The way that they show the gods, oops, that's the different hand. There we go. The way they show the gods looking in on the humans, like scenes that are happening on the ground, as like these like sand sculptures that move around. I thought was very.
It's so creative, cinematic, like it really gets you back into that mindset to remind you at the beginning of the first issue, we're just playthings at this point. The story is like so far removed, and even Artemis intervening or choosing not to intervene is elusive of that. And then we move into Maddie, one of my favorites. So Hera's looking onto the scene and kind of talking through it and talking about whether it's pointless or not pointless. And she says there will be no justice for women, not now, not for 100 years from now. And then she says not 1,000. This is the page that oh my gosh, I am like, I have to, so I'll show you, you can kind of see it's the side on this side, and then I'm going to try to move in. There we go.
Yeah.
Some of the more modern scenes, including one that could literally be 2023.
Yeah.
And some that are familiar, like you probably can guess that's Billie Holiday, for example. Some that are more nameless, like this woman who's in the doctor's office. And obviously spanning decades. And I also love, I want to say that Hera was drawn kind of meaty here. Love it.
Yeah, she is.
She's like a normal looking woman.
Yeah.
Love that.
Which makes sense because if you look at Greek art and like statues and things, it doesn't necessarily, the body
curves are valuable. Yeah, curves are beautiful.
She does change throughout because they talk a lot about how you can just kind of wipe your hand on your face and change, and we'll get to this, but they mentioned earlier there that she carries a bruise for all of any indignity done to women. And she does it by choice because she doesn't, she wants to make sure she's carrying that. She's such an interesting character because they talk about why, like, her not helping out is also a gift to those women. And I think partially because one, she's so close to Zeus. And if she were to do so, it would make things more apparent to Zeus probably, but
he'd pay more attention, whereas like maybe it's not as bad as it could be or something like that.
Yeah. And then part of that is her feeling like there's no helping it. Because she's like, there's nothing I can do. Because she's like, she talks to Athena. And I really like that back and forth because she's like, why are you doing this when nothing can change? And she's like, and Athena says, well, at least I can forestall the suffering or like get some revenge or something for these women. Even if it's going to happen anyways. It's like, oh man.
I really liked the in that same scene where they're kind of not only we skipped a bit, sorry. Not only Hippolyta having that conversation about wanting to be an Amazon, they in that same encounter they run into a group of women who had recently been attacked. and the Amazons come to fight them. They meet a character who will later become pretty key in the story. Tarpeia. Is that how you would say it?
Oh, I think so. It was so hard.
Okay. So I just wanted to check. And in that interaction, once the women are freed, there's a continued conversation about, well, we want to be Amazons. And I really liked this conversation between them about what it would mean to be an Amazon, that they'd rather be dead than not live free because they know what will happen if they're let go right after that. And I liked this part where I felt like it was one of those, we don't know, again, who is being written to at this point. We don't know. We don't even know fully who's telling the story. And so you're kind of left still in this state of ambiguity until the end. You kind of get a little bit about what they're referencing. And so when I read this in a generic sense, not just in a Hippolyta sense. She says, she's basically talking about at what moment in this transfiguration does Hippolyta, not to get weirdly, I'm not even Catholic, but not to get weirdly into theology, but that's the word that I would use, to like become an Amazon. They're like, was it this moment? Was it this moment? And everybody debates. And they say at the end, Hippolyta became an Amazon the only way a mortal woman can. She became an Amazon when she remembered who she was already, which was like such a powerful line because, again, I feel like, especially because of the ambiguity at this point, intentionally phrased so that you, the reader, could put yourself in that situation and know that I could turn my fate and I could change my principles and I could move forward with conviction at any point. It's already within me once I identify, what's great about me, what's special about me, and what direction and drive that I have. So I really, 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 really liked that page a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree, because I really love that back and forth where they're like, we freed you, you're done. Like, why? We're another, we go through this again. You'll save us again. Like, what are we supposed to do? And then eventually, like, we'll come with you. And they bring them to the other tribes. I guess, did you want to talk about that? Because they do like the breakdown.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to show the page because it really, they again introduce the concept of the tribes because they're asking those women which tribe they want to be in. And I like the way, again, each artist chose to retell information we knew in a new way that was very exciting. And for me, this was really exciting because it reminded me of Grecian tapestries. It reminded me of something that you would see in a museum that would depict many scenes. Just the way that it's very flat. There's many things going on. The sort of like iconography in the style is very like tapestry, telling an ancient tale. So I really liked the way that they chose to do this retelling for sure.
Yeah, I love the breakdown
intricate.
of all of them. Yes. A couple quick questions in the chat. Elon asks, who's winning the World Cup, Jessica?
Oh, Elon. Okay, so my heart wants Australia. We'll see tomorrow. It's Australia v. England, and then we see who plays Spain. Honestly, I'm really excited for Spain. They've been fighting their federation for a while, so it would be a good moral victory for them. But I got to go Australia at this point. They've made it so far, and they're the host country, and that's always a fun thing to see. Thank you for asking, Elon, and let me know who you think is going to win as well.
And Crazed asked, did you watch enough of the Gene Ha director's cut to see them reveal the hidden image on the cover of issue number 2? Just more evidence of how much thought, care, and love was put into the book.
Yes, I did. And because I want everyone to go watch those, and I really will put them in the comments once this video ends, I'm not going to talk about it, but I did watch all of Gene Ha's. It's the weaker one in the middle. Not to say Gene Ha is a weak artist or wasn't an entertaining guest, but they get off track quite a bit. But definitely the first one and the last one are really worth it. So if you feel like the second one gets off track, do come back to the third one.
Always in Sierras. Can we talk about how Phil Jimenez has turned into a pretty jacked daddy the last couple of years? I have friends who turned friends on his Instagram that don't read comics.
What? Valid. Yeah.
I mean,
respectfully.
In gay culture, that's what happens, and he's into that. I love him. There's a lot of like jacked comic book creators out there. Like there's a few. Like Clayman. Who's the other one? There's another guy.
At first I thought you were saying like
Clayface.
Yeah. like
Clayface,
literally and I was like, Maddie, I know you're into monster lovers, but like not right now. That's not what this is about right now.
I mean, I would. Clayface could get it sometimes, not always. It depends on which Clayface it is. But that's not why you guys came here.
No, you came here to hear that they chose a 7th tribe, a tribe of their own, to get the gifts of all of the tribes, to bestow combat, cunning, loyalty, generosity, wisdom, charm, etc.
Yeah.
That's what you came here to talk about.
That's right. Have you accepted that I don't look like Elizabeth Moss? Who's Elizabeth Moss?
She's the handmaid from
Oh,
Handmaid's
I
Tale.
don't look like her. She's a Scientologist.
She is a supermodel, but
I'll
I think
accept
Maddie is far more
compliment,
beautiful.
I'll accept it.
I mean, it is what it is. The Invisible Man was a good movie. That was a good remake.
Have any of you read One Bad? I haven't read the One Bad Day books yet. It's on my list because I do want to read a bunch of those, like a lot of the Gotham villains, but I haven't yet. I've got Gina Carano. I have opinions on her.
Now we're really getting off track.
Anyways, yeah, you are forced to buy Clementine and this. All right.
Yeah, buy this for sure. So they become the 7th tribe, and then we do get into the plot you referenced earlier. If you want to talk through it with the young boy.
Yeah, so we get to a point there they become their own tribe. They're being trained by the rest of their sisters. The rest of the other tribes, right? Because they don't have the same training, the same innate gifts that the other tribes of Amazon do. Now, around this point, they are hunting together now. And the younger one, Tarpeia, has an issue. They run into this group of men, and they go to fight them. And there's a young boy there, and Tarpeia is about to go in for the kill. And they ask her to stop. Like, don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, but he's one of them. He would have killed me. And like, but he is just a boy. He shouldn't die for the sins of his father. And there's this back and forth throughout this that is very interesting because she's really stuck with this. And she ends up actually going back later during the day, which is a mistake because now Apollo can see her because he is the god of sun and kills him in Apollo's temple.
With a great outfit that we'll show later.
She looks so fly with her antlers and everything. But they have this big back and forth, which is really interesting because, especially if you're used to seeing the Amazons in like a "we hate men, don't talk to them" sort of way, they are the problem. It's more nuanced than what it is than this, and in this story, it's definitely more nuanced. Because like this isn't if he is to become this bad person, then we will see him again.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no guarantee, which I appreciate. I appreciate that they are looking the way like no one is what they are born as. No one should carry those sins. It is what you do with it. And everyone should have the opportunity, despite how you were born and where you were born, to be able to live your life and show kindness.
Right. And just like this boy we don't know how he'll grow up. I think it's really, the nuance is important because also important to note, if it wasn't clear when we were going over issue 1, it's not really a utopia. These women are not perfect. In fact, they're pretty awful towards one another. They're very flawed. And so none of this is painted in a sense that like, oh, this all women utopia exists and all men are awful. Absolutely not. There's so much nuance in this book. And it goes out of its way to make sure that everyone understands that.
Which I like, because I think that's important when you're doing this type of book. I think it's important to show the flaw. I think it's important to show the nuance in this. For a lot of reasons. One, things like this can be very divisive in a way that prevents people from learning what the message is in this, right? Because there are people that read this like, oh, are you kidding me? You're just being woke and you're trying to... Like, no, there's a greater discussion on how people should be treated and what people go through. And just characterization in general. There's much more to it than what is at the surface.
Because arguably, Tarpeia is about to do something not great. Pretty awful, in fact.
Yeah, she just walks up and we find as he's praying to Apollo, he said, "I offer myself to you and beg for mercy and justice." And she shows up with this really cool axe that looks like a bird. It says "no justice," and then no justice. Oh, no mercy, only justice. And we see this image of her in the hall of the Temple of Apollo by herself. Again, I can't see because it's flipped.
You're doing it. You're doing great.
And he's just dead. And she's left. And she has no idea what she has set off, because before this, they are not aware exactly of the Amazon. Zeus isn't. But it has come to Apollo's attention. And they, until this point, they've always chosen to act in dark for that purpose, not to alert Apollo.
Apollo in the craziest outfit of all time that I will know.
Oh, yeah, please, let me highlight you. Let me talk about Apollo.
What is the name of that character in Rocky Horror Picture Show that wears the gold pants? Yeah, thank you. I was like, which one is that? That's the vibe, and I love
absolutely.
it.
He both dresses like that and acts like it. He's very much like, Father, no.
I really like his like wicker calf warmers. Like, I'm really into that look, actually.
Yeah. But then we see this really great image where he says, like, we have Zeus talking to Apollo and says, unleash hell upon him. He sees, I could show it, I guess, but you see Zeus and Apollo. I think it's, always forgot his name, Dionysus, Hephaestus, and I assume Ares at the bottom here. So you see.
Oh, I thought it was Hercules. Maybe it is.
Hercules
I'm not sure, yeah.
shows up right here. Well, I mean, as far as the
lion?
Gods go.
Hercules,
right.
That's Hercules. Okay.
We have Ares. Okay. I assume Hephaestus, Dionysus, Apollo, and Zeus.
Which is how issue 2 wraps up.
Yep.
Issue 3, the last part of this volume. But if everybody goes and buys this book, not the last part of this story, because there are 9 issues planned. So please go buy it. And once again, we pull back. We've now got Nicholas Scott on art. So the last of the art change so far, and another prologue to this story. And another, as Maddie mentioned, view of the goddesses. Yeah, I didn't even notice actually till you said that it's a parallel like that. Like, I remembered, of course, that the art changes, they're all referenced again, but I forgot how it was like back to back, especially in those second two.
I like that they show them again. They do it differently every time, and this one highlights what I think is perfect for Nicholas Scott, the like animal of each of them.
Oh yeah,
especially what she's done before. And also Aphrodite is a vision in each of these. I love this imagining of Aphrodite. Actually, of all of them. I think Athena is really cool. I prefer my Athena differently, but that's because I love Athena. But Aphrodite's perfect. Hecate's perfect. And in this one, I love when we have the conversation between Demeter and Hera, because Demeter has chosen to show as an older age. She's made that choice because she wants to look wizened. And I love that back and forth. And then Hera slaying in the first page of issue 3.
The colors are, oh my gosh, insane.
And I wish.
But Maddie, isn't this the cover that isn't it roughly this? This is the one of the other covers you can get. Can't you get 3? This is one of them, I thought. Maybe not.
She looks a little bit different, but yeah, it's weird. It has the pink.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the one.
I might be thinking of just the cover of this issue. I'll have to go up in the back and see when it was on stands. That might be what I'm thinking of.
She is so incredibly fabulous. It's insane. And I love immediately Demeter shows up and she's like, very well, you joyless bitch. It just reminds me of like my grandmother and her sister, how they would talk to one another. You know, that just like, it's just very great.
Yeah, the sister vibe is strong here.
And I love Nicholas Scott's art so much. I mean, it's so intrinsic. You see Nicholas Scott and I think Wonder Woman at the same time. Like, she's one of those that, like, I was really glad when she brought on her and Phil Jimenez. Like, yeah, those are Wonder Woman people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they should be there for the history of her, the history of the Amazons. It just makes sense for them to be there. Because even just like the color choices and everything are just.
Yeah, there's an intense level of detail in this third issue with the background characters, especially because there's a lot of. I mean, obviously war is now upon us based on the way the second issue ended. And so it's not really a huge spoiler, and you'll find out in a moment that is what's going to happen. And so when you have big battle scenes, especially, like, it's really hard to show the big picture and give you an idea of the close-up action. So like the perspective, all the background characters, really well done, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, first we start off with Hercules, which I was glad that they chose this image of Hercules, because I'm pretty sure this is very similar to how we've seen Hercules in DC Comics in the past.
Yeah.
This is not. Oh wait, you can do it.
I was going to show a bigger one of him later.
Yeah.
That I feel like is.
And this
he's not Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah, no Kevin Sorbo.
This ain't your 90s Xena Hercules.
If only. But yeah, he looks a lot like how he's been shown to look in DC. Just huge. Like, not this, like, it's hard to see Hercules, and when they call him Hercules, this is the other way to say it, but he is a warrior, yes, but he's not this kind warrior that you've seen in other things. And all the queens show up.
He's not trying to woo Meg at the water fountains.
No.
At the waterfalls, a la
And
Disney's
when Hippolyta was like, why not take my girdle? He was like, bet. I'd love to.
And that's exactly what he said. Maddie, don't show the page. He said bet.
What? She's like, why not my girdle? Come in close up to unleash it, won't you? Instead of saying, oh, I shot, it said, oh, bet. But all the queens show up to fight him, which I love. And also, it was a little unfair, but, you know.
Well, they give him a nice little prayer, eulogy.
Yeah, they do cut him up and send his body parts back. But this is the most, like, this is a lot.
It's metal. Kristen, one would say it's metal.
One would say. Does it help with the depth of the story to have an understanding of Greek mythology? I would say yes, but I don't think you don't have to, because they do explain it to you throughout. It added to the depth of my, like, enjoyment of it as someone who, like other geeky children, loved Greek mythology. So for me, I'm like, yes, this is something that I know. Let's go. But you don't have to.
No, and it could work the other way. Like, Elon, you might read it and then be like, oh, I want to check out other stories. Yeah. Or if you want a Wonder Woman run that does a lot of that, it's Perez run for sure. Mm-hmm. That's like heavy Greek mythology. But again, written in a way that you could pick it up. And trust me, there's a lot of words on those pages. You're going to get the picture through dialogue.
And if you want a less wordy, I'd say New 52 gives you a great modernized version of all those same Greek gods.
Yeah, I didn't like Azzarella's run, but I did like that American Gods Neil Gaiman vibe of like character. It reminded me of Wicked and the Divine. I don't really know which came first. I think Wicked and the Divine, but I'm not sure. But I really liked that part of it. But yeah, they chop off Hercules' head and they mail it back. USPS express shipping.
Yeah. Zeus is pissed, and I love, because like the next few pages we see the Amazons going to war, right? Mm-hmm. With the soldiers of the gods. And at the same time, while we're seeing pictures of that, we're seeing this back and forth between Zeus and Hera, which is great, because I also love when Hera's like, or he's like, what happened? You murdered my son. She's like, oh, me? I didn't do. And which son? You have so many. Oh, Heracles, the bastard that you thought would be fun to name after me.
Petty.
Sure.
Can't be.
His
head is so tiny too in Hercules' hand, or Zeus's hands. Like, look how tiny that little bag head is. That's so tiny.
And I love this line of he's like, my son, Hera. She's like, is it too late to save him? Stitch him into your thigh, perhaps? He's like, they're in pieces, Hera. Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Ugh. And all the while we get that Nicholas Scott art that's beautiful.
Yes, and on that page right after the argument, he like hits her.
Yeah.
And there's a homage back to the first issue, because the violence against her is, just for speaking her mind, is the red silhouette again.
Oh,
so
I didn't realize
once again, we see a different level of detail. when the women are committing violent acts that of their choosing, right, wrong, indifferent, because we referenced one earlier that feels very wrong to me as a modern reader for sure.
Yeah.
You see it. I mean, you see it to some extent. When it's committed upon them, not something they necessarily brought upon themselves, you see it as this like silhouetted version. So yeah, it's a harken back to that.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Because, yeah, I mean, they don't shy away from it when it's them fighting.
No, you see the awful things they're doing and what is being done to them because they are choosing to engage.
You have this big fight scene, which I love this close-up of Hippolyta's face up here. Like, I mean, there's just tons of detail.
Mm-hmm. In emotion.
Yeah. But I love it back. I love it so much. And there's this back and forth with, like, you know, they're struggling. They're not winning this war. It's not going well. And Hera's finally stepping in to try to figure out how she can get involved. And she's talking to the other gods. She's talking to Dionysus. She's trying to get Dionysus to work with her on this because some of those women, some of the Amazons, are patrons of his because they are into theater, because they were not allowed to practice theater outside in the world. So within the walls of the Amazons, they were able to do that. They were able to enjoy that. And they were very excited to finally be able to do that. And so she talks to Dionysus and she's like, why would you abandon them? You're losing this talent. They'll die. And they'll take everything with them. And I loved that back. Also, I love that they gave Dionysus grape hair. Love that. And she promises him, because, you know, he's like, what do you mean? Who cares? I'm not going to involve myself. She's like, listen, if she dies, her gift will die with her. And the shame of that is something I shall not ever let you forget. But should she live, I promise you, what she will create in your name will bring tears to the eyes of the gods. And so Mina's like, yeah, I got you.
Bet.
And then they show Apollo again.
That's the best picture. I want those wicker gold calf warmers.
They are like wicker, aren't they?
They remind me of like the Golden Girls patio furniture, like 80s patio furniture.
My dad exclusively had wicker furniture in the living room.
Inside?
Yes.
Wow.
And then, so I grew up with that. And he finally, again, horrible taste, he replaced the living room furniture with more wicker furniture, Jessica.
No.
It's like his bachelor pad. It's like, sir, what woman is going to hang out with you on your wicker furniture?
Important to note, Maddie's parents were not together at the point.
No. They divorced when I was like 4.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify. She was like, my mom is out of here because of the wicker furniture.
Get a new lady. Let me help you out.
But yeah, I love that scene. I also love I love the glass of wine that he's just like casually having. But when I mentioned they're looking upon, you can kind of see them talking over here, like they're above the clouds on this column, just looking down and having this casual conversation while literal war is happening below. Like you've seen like super violent stuff up till this point, and here's these two bros in like the gaudiest outfits of all time, just like casually talking about the fate of all these people below. It's hilarious.
And I love this back because there's like this another page where they do show Minotaur, which I was very excited about because I was like, that Minotaur is going to be your friend one day, Diana. They say they're talking about it's the narrator said, we are all powerful, but we are not all powerful. Do you understand the difference? I was like, oh, I do. I'm so sorry. Who are you in the face of that which you cannot control? Damn narrator. Ugh. And all of them are like, okay, we're just going to die. This is it. It's the end of our story. And Hippolyta's like, no, I have a sacred duty to you. I'm going to help you. And she's someone who, again, is an Amazon of her choosing, but she is not someone with gifts, minus what, the claiming of Artemis. And she's Artemis said, yeah, I'll do you a solid. Let me take you and the horse up to Olympus to talk to Zeus. And I love the way they put this together because normally people, when they show Olympus, they show it as what is recognizably the physical place you can go to. But I like that this book does lean into, this is of gods. This should feel like it is extra worldly. It should feel like something that you can't quite place and you don't know where you exist in it. So I like when they show up, yes, there's columns that reflect, their temples and everything, but the rest of it is just kind of like space.
Yeah, and the page before that, Maddie, also has, you mentioned the animals were strategically shown at the beginning of this issue, represented each of the goddesses, and you can see them on that white page, kind of surrounding her in that animal form. And of course, the impetus, we didn't mention that Tarpeia is killed. And Tarpeia is a significant character in the story, and I believe wholly created for the series. So this is the moment where, Hippolyta has this at the end of her barrel, at the end of the line, and is up here now having this conversation.
Yeah, I love it because she goes to talk to Zeus, and there's this back and forth, and Artemis is like her staunch supporter this entire time. Because Zeus would rather not give her anything. Because she says, I've come to surrender and ask for your mercy. And he said, oh, the same mercy you showed my son. She's like, hey, if we hadn't fought him, that would have been rude.
Valid points. He was
Valid
like, bet.
Bet.
Don't show the page. He really said that, everyone. You better go buy it so you can find out.
I need to edit it. There's like, I haven't listened to it. There's some like X-Men podcasts, about, they talk about just X-Men issues. And the TikTok is just like, they take the panels they're talking about, but change the dialogue to
oh my gosh,
that in the podcast. I was like, oh,
you make me want to be back on TikTok. You make me want to be
I know, I've deleted it, actually. Are you proud of me?
I mean, I'm not making a judgment. If I wasn't judging you for being on it, but yeah, that takes a lot of self-control to come off of it. I can tell you that for sure.
I miss it greatly when I have free time. But they have this back and forth. They have this like deliberating, which in the middle of it, Hippolyta is like, how dare you? How dare you bicker over our lives and our freedom? You treat us as livestock, but you're not even good shepherds. Damn.
There's a lot of mic drop moments in this book.
Yes, a rebroadcast. Thank you, Darkwave Fairy. I want to listen to it. I'm not as well versed in like X-Men, but
okay, because what's the one I used to listen to? Darkwave Fairy. If you know this, let me know. But it was with Jay Edidin and their ex partner, I think. But I think they still make the podcast together. I used to listen. That was Jay and whoever the second person was explain the X-Men. It was really good, and I think it's still going on. Yeah. Would highly recommend. So if anyone knows that one, drop it in the chat.
Yeah, he makes her choose if she wants to save this girl or save the Amazons, basically, and she chooses the Amazons. But in this way, the Amazons, without their choice, because the Amazons wanted to die. Basically, they're like, we've died for our cause. We will not give in.
And what they most feared was not being free. In their initial even being Amazons, they were like, we may as well die because we won't be free. And this choice will trap them. We'll let them live, but we'll trap them. And so again, they're like losing their freedom. And in this situation, Hippolyta is making the decision for them. And just to recall, we didn't mention this, but in the seventh tribe, when they decided to be the seventh tribe and they said, what is the thing that will define us? The thing that will define them was consensus, that they would sort of be democratic about it. Yeah. And so here we have the opposite of that. Well-meaning Hippolyta thinks they're not here to give that consensus. And so I'm going to do this. Which adds so much to the mascara, to that character. Like, again, this is like an alternative viewpoint, but I think you can still take some of this into the way you read other things.
Well, especially Hippolyta, because like, as you said before, that sometimes she is this, you said that she gets in the way of Diana. Sometimes she's supportive of Diana. Sometimes she is this wonderful, empathetic queen. Sometimes she is very much not that. And I think that reflects in this because they talk about she makes this decision for all the Amazons. They are revived after death. They are sent to Themyscira to live, and they have to stay there. And she makes a decision that she herself would have rallied against in the issue before, because she has the same conversation with the Amazons when they say, "You're free, we're going to leave you." She's like, "No, don't you understand? I would rather die." nothing's going to change for me. And she's done the same for them. And it ends basically with her revisiting what first brought her to this path, which is she molds this baby out of sand, thinking about if she had lived her life differently that day, if she had not come after that baby, if she had just let it be. And she runs into the ocean, and Hera's like, I got you. That's not, she says it much more politely.
She says, bet.
Bet. And she takes that soul of Diana and she brings life to that mold in the sand. Like, referencing the whole, like, whether she was born or she came out of clay, right? And all of the goddesses bestow upon Diana their gifts.
Yeah, and the name comes from, Artemis throughout the course of the book changes names and personas and characters, etc. And Hera says, do you have like a name to spare? And then we see it written in the sand, the name that they choose. But we mentioned earlier at the beginning, while the sand was happening, that's the conversation we referenced at the beginning between Hera and Artemis. They're still not in agreement over what's happening, over what's happening with Hippolyta, over the choices that she made. But they do work together. They have different agendas. They have quarrels with one another. They do not see eye to eye, but there is like this level of respect, and that comes back in this bestowing upon Diana their blessing and their gift. It is a horrifying baby, though. I will warn everyone.
Listen,
if you are afraid of
Nicholas
horrifying babies,
can't draw a baby, okay? She can't draw a baby.
It's not a John Byrne baby, but it is not great.
It's so bad.
It's not great, guys.
Listen, no one's perfect, okay?
We were all like, horrifying baby. And there is a great monologue again where you see, so the very last page, I don't know if you can show it, but she says, the narrator, we've not known who she was talking about. She says, can you love as the goddesses love you? Have the courage to bear the pain that will surely attend to that love. Of course you do. We know because we recognize our own. We know you. And then you see Diana's name in the sand. It says, you are an Amazon. Yeah. And again, it's a page where I feel like the way that it's strategically written could apply to the reader as well, because there is a very nice monologue throughout the Diana burst scene about, we're born to die. A lot of awful things happen, but the one thing that we have is the love that we can share with one another. And very importantly, to love our lives, our fellows, and when we are very brave ourselves, precedes that ending page. So it's
so good.
It's a goosebumps ending.
In the back, if you buy the book, they go into all of the descriptions for everyone, and you get to see some of the names of everyone too, because what they don't show you as they're going through this originally is that some of the Amazons now in DC Comics came from these original tribes, right? So not always the main one. That was horrifying. Now I have to see a John Byrne baby.
John Byrne babies giving people nightmares since 19 whatever.
Because where is it? Because they have Nubia in here. So Nubia is from the tribe of Demeter. And so is Philippus, who also is like in there often. I think Philippus was with Hippolyta, but they don't mention her as like the main person when they show that. So it's cool to see they were here.
Yeah, you can see, and it's really neat too, because by the book, you can see how their costumes were inspired by the main goddess as well, which I think is really cool.
So cool.
Yeah, it's not the most in the world, but there's actually quite a bit of value-added media in the back as far as commentary, script design, artist process pages, quite a bit. It's definitely interesting. And again, I will put those director's cut links in the chat. It's so worth it. But yeah, the media in the back as well is just stellar. And this book is like $20. Like,
oh God, yeah.
I just can't stress enough that everyone should own this. If it wasn't clear before, Elon earlier said, would they be needing to buy this, be coerced into it.
Yeah.
Yes, bet we will come to
That,
your house
and
if you do not buy
if we
this.
get more, maybe we'll get lucky and get absolute. Could you imagine oversize of this art?
Oh, I actually can't. My
Die.
mind cannot
I
comprehend
would
the
die.
goodness.
I think you got Age of Market.
They're so bad. Like, that's what I
I
think.
like them.
Sometimes when I'm like, wow, this art, they made a choice. There was actually a small child in issue 2, one of the Gene Ha issues. I think it was that little boy where I was like, this is on the verge of a John Byrne baby. It's
That's
so
not a baby.
close.
That's a man's face.
It's a man.
Baby.
It's like an Oompa Loompa, but with like human skin. That's how I would describe a John Byrne
Oh
baby. If
my
you've never seen one.
gosh. Ugh. For anyone who wants to talk more about Wonder Woman Historia, Near Mint's Patreon is having a book club over Zoom with Astonishing Melanie on Sunday, August 27th.
Yes.
Thank you for letting us know, James.
Read it. Go. 100%.
I just had a flashback to Wanda's kid in the bathtub in West Coast Adventures.
That's the one. That's the one that will get you.
It's just, it's always interesting because there can be some very fantastic artists that struggle with either drawing old people or babies.
Mm.
And so you're like, oh, you couldn't get that one.
Or side profiles. Like,
yeah,
really bad. But I mean, the art, again, stressing that the art throughout this is really stellar. That one little child moment, we can forgive it. It's not. Gary Frank so also had a horrifying one in Superman Secret Origin that I was reminded of when rereading that. Like, it happens. People are allowed to have slip ups. It's okay.
Nobody's perfect. Okay.
Nobody's perfect. But you know what is perfect, Maddie?
What?
This book. What do we rate out of here in this show? 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. All the roses.
I did too. Yeah, I gave it 10 out of 10. Easy. It's very good. I would like more of this.
Please.
That would be really great.
Thank you.
Because I want an absolute. I want big. And if they have prints of this at all, I would like a bunch of it, and I'll just make a whole gallery wall of just prints of this book. The end.
It's so good. It's so good. And I really regret. I just regret not reading it along the way. I regret not. Yeah. I mean, I was buying it, so like they don't know whether I was reading those issues or not. But
at least you're buying it.
Yeah,
I think got on me once about that. They're like, "What do you mean you buy it and don't read it until you get in trade?" And I was like, "I'm buying it so the money goes to it, so it continues, so I can get it in trade."
I think what I thought this was, and I mean, if you've watched this far, you know it's not, obviously. But I think is it called The Other History of the DC Universe?
Oh,
it was mostly prose.
Maybe that's what I was also worried about.
I think I thought it was that, which again is really beautiful, really thoughtful, definitely for someone, not what I was personally looking for.
Yeah.
Again, all celebrate the creators, celebrate the stories that they're telling. I own the Renee Montoya single because that's my girl. That's my girl. But that's not what this is. This is a real, you are getting getting like what feels like this mash of like a prose style narration, but a comic story. So like, definitely if you were somebody who's a little skeptical of what Black Label can offer, like I didn't like the Swamp Thing Green Hell. I thought it was fine, but I didn't feel like it was prestige. Like I don't feel like it warranted this prestige format. And this one, like so what I'm saying is like, you can see Black Label and some people are like, oh, it's great. And then you can also see Black Label and be like, well, that's kind of like it's a hit and miss. And this is definitely a hit is just all I want to stress to folks. If you're kind of on the fence, I mean, I don't think you're going to regret it. And again, I think this is definitely new reader friendly, especially if you have someone who wants to read about mythology. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you're a Wonder Woman fan, this is a staple for sure.
For sure. 100%. Yeah.
Just to build out the world more. Like, this is giving me a lot more to think about. They talk about how hard it is to draw babies. Phil says one of the hardest things. And he goes on to, of course, nail it.
Yeah, that baby was fine. That's correct. Yeah, that baby was fine. Yeah. And the baby that was sand was also fine. It was just like when the hair got on the baby at the Nicola. I don't know. That was just.
It's just a person head. Oh, no.
But hey, I could never. So.
That's true. I can't talk. I draw anime face. That's it.
Yeah, no room to talk. No room to talk at all.
What was your guys' favorite issue for art and or story? I don't think I can pick one. And I know that's a kind of that's a safe answer, But for me, I don't want to pick one out of all of them because I'm so happy with all of them, and I think it's the three of them that work so well together. If I had to choose art, no, see, I can't even do that because they're so good. Because I love Nicholas Scott a lot, but man, that first Jimenez is crazy.
For overall, I mean, I agree with everything you said, but I'm actually very like, here are my top 5 favorites. You know that's how my brain works. I think, and it changed because I read this twice. Crazed. I read it when you asked me to read it or mentioned it weeks ago. Then I reread it, and it changed a bit. I think issue 2 is my overall favorite. I really like the conversations about the tribes. I like what makes an Amazon. I really think the art is very solid. I think art on its own, I just don't understand how you could not pick the first one. Again, they're all so good, but like it is truly masterclass next level. I mean, it just is. And to be fair, I'm not sure the other two were necessarily trying to do that. And I'm sure we're very intimidated by that. They intentionally went a different way because this is what the story demanded. But just the wow factor has to be the first one for me. But I really like the story in the second one. I agree, though. It's a narrative, and that is really key. Like I mentioned with the Black Label, it feels like an epic in the way a Black Label should feel prestige, but it feels cohesively narratively cohesive, even with the varying art styles in the way that you would want an ongoing series to feel. So it's really got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think about soil. Well, man, we killed it. Normally, Already Reader doesn't. There's a lot to talk about in this.
Crushed it. We always pick good, solid ones.
I know. This is great. And we get to hang out, you and me. And that's what's great about it. Well, we're at the end of it. We both gave it 10 out of 10. Please read it. I'll be back next week with Cosmo Knights Volume 1 and 2. Very excited about that.
Oh, I'll be tuning in. I'm so excited because I read them.
I haven't read Volume 2 yet. But I'll reread both before the show so I can be ready.
You're going to love it.
Super stoked. The week after that is Invisible Kingdom by J. Willow Wilson.
I do want to read that. I haven't gotten. I need to request it from the library. Yeah. Also, Maddie. I mean, I'm sure people know this, but Cosmo Knights, if people feel like their order won't come in quick enough, is free online still, right? And Volume 2 is also free online.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Cosmo Knights for next week. If you want to read along and you don't have it, it's a webcomic as well. So you just look up Cosmo Knights. It's on Hannah's website. You can check it out. It's a great, wonderful, chunky trade. It's like a sci-fi. Oh, sorry, I keep doing it. You're not doing it.
I was just showing.
There's space pirates
and there's French flaps. If that's what you're into, if you're in a French flaps,
love French flaps. Yeah. It's super fun. So it's gonna be a very different take than this, but it's great. So I hope I see you guys next week. And Jess, do you have a Sunday show this week?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Sunday at 1:00 on the Comic Slayers channel, we're going to be discussing issues, I believe 1 through 96, the first 2 compendiums of The Walking Dead. We also have a really fun, not sponsored by, little challenge that we gave one another. So if you just want 90s nostalgia at the very beginning and you're not into The Walking Dead, you can just peace out after that.
Be sure to talk about how I lived across from the hospital that Walking Dead starts at.
Okay, I'll try to remember that fun fact. I mean, I am going to bring up the Walking Dead Day in good old Cynthiana. Yeah,
good old Cynthiana, Kentucky. All we
good
have
old Cynthiana, Kentucky,
and Raggedy Ann. That's it.
They invented Raggedy Ann. Is there like a statue that I missed?
No, but there's a yearly Raggedy Ann festival.
Send me the info. Do I want to go to that? Yeah.
Go. I'll take you to the local diner.
It could be horrifying, but I'm in.
It probably is. But anyways, everybody have a good night, and I'll catch you next week.